Welcome to the Divorce Remix Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Divorce Remix Podcast, formerly Move the Finish Line Podcast. And on this podcast, I am chatting with experts in hopes of providing you guys resources and tools that will help you to reclaim and create a life you love after divorce. You know, I always say that divorce is a death, but it's not a death sentence. And so one of my goals after surviving 3 divorces is to help you guys to, walk on, continue, start, finish your healing journey. And so today, we've got a topic that I think most of us probably cringe about when we hear it, specifically after a devastating event like a divorce. And so we're going to be talking about finances, y'all. Yes, we're going to be talking about y'all money. And our goal today is to just help you guys to rethink money, to realign your thoughts with what you can actually do with your finances. And so I've got an expert with me here. Her name is Ericka Young, and she is a financial educator. She's a coach. She's a best-selling author. She's got a book called Naked and Unashamed, 10 Money Conversations Every Couple Must Have. Now, listen, don't be scared off by the title because it says couples, okay? Even if you're not a couple, you a couple with Jesus, you a couple with yourself, you might be a couple with your kids, get this book, y'all. And at the end of the conversation, I'll ask Ericka where you can find it. She has been helping people for 18 years, y'all. That's a long time. And so I've been in business for almost 10 years. So to get to 18, I applaud you, Ericka. But she has helped over 500 families, y'all. Over 500 to crush debt so that they can have a vibrant and intentional life. And so hopefully she'll give you guys some tips today that'll help you guys do the same. So welcome to the podcast, Ericka.
Wow, thank you so much for having me. I love hearing you introduce me. I need to take you on the road.
Amen. Amen. I will be people's best hype man ever. So the reason why I thought about you guys is not because of all the accolades, right? Not because of all the wonderful things people have said about you and your husband. So how I met you guys, and this is my first memory of meeting your family, is I was sitting in church, man, maybe 12 years ago, and your husband was sitting next to me. Her husband, Chris, was sitting next to me, and our pastor was doing a sermon called The Chair. And he was talking about, getting out of your seat and volunteering and things like that. And I was at a place in my healing journey where I was like, I don't want to do nothing but come to church and go home. And her husband looked at me, did not know this dude at all, looked at me, and he was like, when are you going to start volunteering? So my first thought was, who are you? And my second thought was, okay, Holy Spirit, thanks. And so 14 years or 12 years since then, I've been in my church for 14 years. I have served in many of areas. I actually am now on staff as the director of marketing and operations and leading our Kingdom Business Association. And so just because of Chris turning to me and saying, when you going to start volunteering, I am who I am today. So tell
That's
him I said thank you.
amazing. Oh, that's so awesome. You know what's so funny is that is totally him. He knows no stranger, right? So he'll be in a grocery line or at a park or wherever, and he just engages random people. And yeah, that one might have been simply the Holy Spirit, but I'm glad he opened his mouth because that was pivotal in your life, and that's awesome.
It was. So love you guys as a couple. So Ericka, tell us a little bit about how you got started in this industry. Because I know when I think about finances, I just out of numbers and budgets and all those things. Don't even want to think about it. So how did you get started?
That's a great question. I was an engineer by trade. I went to school, the University of Michigan, for engineering. And so I was geared towards numbers and statistics and analyzing data and things like that anyway. I enjoyed numbers, which is something that a lot of people don't like to say or wouldn't be able to say about themselves. So I was already a nerd. I was already a numbers nerd. The thing that shifted for me was as an engineer, I realized that there was something missing, specifically people interaction. I did a lot of work with my computer in a dark room. I didn't have to talk to people as a design engineer. And though I loved some of the things of that, I just felt depleted in terms of my social interaction. And people would say to me, "Why are you here, Erica?" I would just get so much life from the water cooler conversation or giving a presentation, for instance. And so that's one piece of it in terms of the career path. It didn't exactly fit my personality. But the other side of it is, in that process of my first career as an engineer, my husband and I realized that we needed to get out of debt. We had a ton of debt, and as we had children, got more debt. So we had about $60,000 in debt. And then we had our kids, and we grew that number to $90,000 in debt. And that is easy to do. The only thing that we added was 2 cars. So one car broke down. We're like, "Oh, let's get another car," and then we were going to have another baby, and we wanted something safer and reliable. And so we added to our debt load with the vehicles, and that was pretty normal. And we really wanted to figure out why we had over $1,200 per month in payments, how we could not have that anymore. And we realized that the budget, really getting serious about looking at the numbers and targeting what I now consider a debt-free date, was of crucial importance. And so we didn't have anyone to really teach us about numbers when we were growing up. Both of us came from single parent households. And so our journey began with reading books, going to seminars, listening to people on the radio, really fully understanding that we had to do more than just like save for retirement, which is pretty much all they tell you to do. And we learned that the budget and being very, very diligent with tracking your spending is a big portion of figuring out how you can have extra to put towards that debt reduction. So we did that. We got out of debt in about 5 years with our consistency and diligence. And then I realized how excited it made us and how much lighter we felt on a regular basis because the payments were no longer there. And I wanted to help other people do the same thing. And so I took classes on business. I went and volunteered even at church. Our pastor said, "Hey, I've got a couple of people you can talk to." And um, I really began to see that this is something I enjoyed. I love the fulfillment of helping someone see their eventual finish line and start moving towards it. And so that's how I got into the business. It's been lots of different evolutions and shifts and maneuvers since then. But that's how I got started. And honestly, I don't look back. I don't miss engineering because I really feel satisfied and fulfilled. And I'm able to use my creative skills as well as the application skills and, help people make some real change in their finances.
Oh, I love it. I love that journey. And I just want to like pull something out of that that's not even, I guess, directly tied to this topic, but how you were able to take something that you loved and essentially shifted or left a career that most people would have said, "Girl, you're gonna make a lot of money as as an engineer."
Yeah.
Um, and even though you have not been divorced, a lot of my listeners may be questioning like their career choices, especially in this, what I call this, writing your best chapter in blank slate season. And as you were saying, like you had this great job, but you knew something was missing. And one of the things I know about you, Erica, is that you love people. And
Hmm.
so, like you were saying, being in the dark room with your computer, that was not fulfilling your purpose of loving people. So, for those of y'all who are listening and you may be thinking, like, man, I'm stuck in this career, and you can chase your dream because Erica did that and she's doing amazing. So,
And I will tell you too, I think that when you have debt, you tend to have less options because you
mhm.
feel like you have to do things. You have to go to work, you got to pay the bills. You feel tied up, if you will, and getting out of debt helps open up options. I will never forget one of my clients. They actually, one of them was a financial planner. I've had lots of clients. I've had doctors, I've had attorneys, and yes, I have had financial planners whom you would think would be great at their money. The thing is that paying attention to the details on a monthly and regular basis is a skill that everybody needs. And it doesn't matter what your career path is, you may not have that skill and you need to develop it. But in their case in particular, the husband was in a job that he wasn't super excited about, and them getting out of debt. And this one debt in particular was about $1,000 a month. And it was the thing that trapped him and kept him at a job he wasn't super excited about. Um, when they paid off their debt in about a year and a half, that one big debt that was $1,000 a month, he left. He actually left and started his own practice. And so because he actually didn't have so many things holding him to a paycheck, that he could
Mhm.
free himself up to go do something and build something that he would enjoy. And I would say that any transitional point in life, be it divorce or the loss of a job or, moving across the country or whatever it is, that there's this aha moment where something new is possible. There's an opportunity, and how you use that contributes to, whatever future it is that you want to create. And so I would also say that don't think of those moments as all negative. They're not
Yeah,
100% negative. There's always something great that can come out of even the darker situations in our life.
that is so, so good. So what I hear you saying is being out of debt is freedom.
Yes, and in more than just a financial way.
Yeah, yeah. I know along my journey, being divorced 3 times, and those were the 3 times that I would say that my financials were in kind of a dark, a dark place, which is interesting. But being in those situations, I know the feeling of the stress of having to stay at a job that you don't love, or having to work extra jobs because literally you just have to keep the roof over your head. And now, these last 2 years, being in a position where I don't have that debt anymore, I was blessed to be able to get out of debt just recently in the last 2 years. And
Congrats
so,
to you.
thank you. So that is freedom. And I mean, even things like, I remember the days of getting a bill and literally having to say, okay, like, what am I not going to pay? What's not going to get done because this has to get done. And just recently being in a position where a good friend of mine has an event coming up in January, and she's like, I want you to come. And I was like, great, let me look at some tickets. Let me get a car. No problem. And it was just like, man, I'm gonna be honest, I love this life of no debt. So freedom, y'all.
Mhm.
Freedom. So
Yep.
Ericka, you did mention that you weren't taught a lot growing up in regards to finances. So what examples, financial examples, did you have as a child?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, specifically, I will say that my grandfather gave me a positive, and aspirational example for finances. One day in particular, I remember him taking my mother to a car dealership because her car was on the outs or had already died, and he bought her a car with cash and handed over the hundreds in a stack. Like, I saw the cash money. It wasn't a check, it wasn't financing, and I was in awe. And I was less than 10 years old, and I was in awe um of the fact that he had that much money, and that much money was going to impact us. Now, this is my father's father. So this was my mother's father-in-law, and she was no longer married to my father.
Mm,
And I bring that up because he loved her and his grandkids enough that no matter if the relationship dynamic had changed, he was going to make certain that we had what we needed. And this part is the aspirational piece, is because I want to be in a place, and I learned that it was possible to be in a place where I could impact someone in that way, where
mm,
I can buy them a car or make some type of difference in their life. And even if the relationship dynamic has changed, not let that be the barrier to being helpful in that way. And you can only do that if you have an opening where money is not the issue, where debt is not the issue. And so he was a great example. He didn't teach me specifically, Erica, you need to do this. He showed me with his actions what money can do for you.
Yeah.
And then I'll be honest, I think it's okay to learn from the things that weren't so great either.
Yeah.
Right. I learned how mismanagement, and not specifically, I'm not saying my mother, I'm just saying in general, I've seen it through different family members or other relationships where mismanagement with money, bouncing checks, for instance, how that's stressful, bankruptcy, how that makes you feel less than. What I learned from witnessing mismanagement with money is that I I didn't want it for myself. And so I didn't look at the people as bad or, this
Yeah.
isn't, I looked at it as, okay, got it. I see how this makes them feel. I don't want to feel like that.
Yeah.
And what do I need to do in order for that not to be my story? And so I think that the good things are great to learn from, but also the things that aren't so great, you learn what not to do and that you want more. Because I don't want people to think that every experience needs to be thrown out if it isn't good. I
Yeah.
learned this from a coach recently, um, that you leave no experience left behind. There's always something to learn. So every experience has value, and we just need to know how to use it to our advantage.
That is so, so good. I kind of in the same boat where my grandfather, and I didn't appreciate this until I was much older, specifically as a business owner, was that my grandfather was very good with money. And I remember growing up with him when I came along. So my dad is the baby, his oldest sibling, I think there's like 20 or 25 years apart. So when I came along, my grandparents were retired. But I saw him get up in the morning and he would have like houses that were being renovated, and I would go with him and all these different things. And so I never felt that he had the struggle, and listening to my father, they were always in a position where they didn't necessarily lack anything or, things like that. So I saw that example. And then my father and my stepmother, they always, what I felt like, did okay. They were in the military. I never had to worry about, the lights being turned off or not having food. And I know that there at times were some struggles, but I didn't see that. Now, on the flip side of that, with my biological mother, who unfortunately was a drug addict, I got to see the polar opposite of that, where younger days, we would live in these, almost condemned apartments, and we were getting evicted. When I say evicted, I mean like coming home and your stuff was on the street, evicted. And that was normal because everyone around us was having those issues. I shared with you when we were preparing for this podcast that in middle school, there was not a time I remember where we had food, electricity, and running water at the same time, right?
Mm,
Which seems like such a foreign concept now, but that was the norm because your friends may not have had electricity. So they were at your house, or someone didn't have food. So you were at their house, it was the norm. And so, like you said, you can learn from both experiences. So one of the things that I learned from my grandfather and my parents was to try to prepare, right? From my mother, I learned how to hustle. So one thing I would say is that when we didn't have, she hustled. And there were times where summers where we ate at homeless shelters because we didn't have food. And she, as I got older in high school and realized her lifestyle, she would be honest with me and she'd be like, I partied too much last night, so I don't have the rent. And I'm like, huh, what? you
yeah.
know? And so I wholeheartedly support what you're saying, as in regards to we've got to pull from the negatives and the positives, that the examples that we've seen. So like you said, you had this desire for getting out of debt. You love numbers. What are some of the things you did specifically when you guys said, look, we're done with this, like we want a different lifestyle? What are some of the things that you guys did?
Yeah. Well, the very first thing that I think everybody ought to do, and is very eye opening, it was eye opening for us, is to add up all of your expenses by category for 1 month's time. So look back at 30 days, look at your bank statement, look online, whatever you want, however you want to do it. but add it up by category. So everything that is under groceries, everything that is under clothing, everything. So all of those things, because I think people tend to see a budget as these are the bills I have to pay. And then they say, well, I got to have food. And they don't realize that dining out is a luxury, not a necessity. Food is a necessity. How you get that food is up for question, right? It's a need versus a want. Need food, you want to dine out. And so I think adding it up to see how much you're spending in all of the areas for gas, for kids' activities and all of that, and facing real numbers, not fictitious numbers you put on the paper that you wish would happen, but to have that reality check where you're facing what already occurred in your bank account, in your household, and seeing that for what it is. That is the first step, in my opinion. You can't create a budget if you don't know where your money went, period. People tend to create a budget and it's aspirational. It's not based in reality. And so the important thing here is to base it in reality. So you figure out what the reality is, and then you can base it. Honestly, the other thing is I would actually ensure that you have done something similar with your debt. Add up, get your credit report first, and then add up all of the debt that you have, the total payments and the total amount for the balances, and face that as well. Sometimes this is the hardest part. So typically I will say, you know what? Get you some chocolate, have a glass of wine, put on some mood music or something to get you to where you feel better about really being able to digest this information. Or even, you know what, call a friend. Hey, I'm about to do this. I need you to hold me accountable. Call me in an hour, make sure I got it done. Right. But whatever is going to help ensure that you finish and accomplish this goal. Now, I'll be very frank and say, I don't think it's important for you to do both on the same day. That might be overwhelming and you might, it just might ruin your day. Let's just say. But I think setting aside a little bit of time on a couple of different days, maybe this is a 2-step process or a 3-step process, and that's okay. But I think facing your numbers is vitally important. And once you do that, then you actually know you have a baseline for where you can take things. If dining out is $500, wow, man, I've got, what if I cut it in half? That $250 that I already spent in a previous month can go somewhere towards my goals. So you have information. I think data will help you make better decisions.
Yes, the budget, the dreaded budget. Yes. So, the way that I think of it is, your numbers tell a story. When we go to the doctor, what do they look at? They look at your numbers to get a baseline for your health and where you need to be. Your finances are no different. Your numbers tell a story. When I went through my second divorce, I was in that position where I had to file bankruptcy. My daughter was 6 months old when we divorced. I had a decent job, but I had probably $70,000 in debt. And talking to a few people who were wise in finances, praying about it, that was a decision I made. And you're right, it makes you feel like crap. It makes you feel like a failure. And I'm not here to knock anyone who is considering bankruptcy, because what I can tell you is that it was my saving grace.
Sure.
I've never been back there, and I will never be back there. But it was my saving grace. And one of the things that came out of that was exactly that, was a budget. And so I've got like the, spreadsheet with the formulas, and I can tell you how much money I'm gonna have left over in July. I can tell you that right now, because before I purchase anything, before I commit to anything, what does my budget say, right? What does it say I have left over? And so that's great. I think that starting with the budget, facing your fear of money. So I was that person initially where it was like, I don't even want to see. If I don't see it, it don't exist. Right. But then having a child changed that. And I was like, okay, I got to take a look at this. And so, being brave enough to look at the numbers, like Ericka said, if you got to do it with a friend, do it with a friend, y'all. Okay. But it's never too soon. It's never too late. Like, get in there and figure out what's going on with your numbers.
Yeah.
So now, we've got this budget in place. Yay. What are some of the things that you guys had to kind of shave away that you felt like may have hurt a little bit?
You know what? Honestly, in the very beginning, we didn't have a whole lot to shave. That's the
Okay.
truth. But what I will tell you is that my husband did take the credit card away from me. So for us, it was because of dining out. Like I was an engineer. I thought, oh man, I want to go out to eat with my coworkers. The problem was I was really doing that behind his back. I put it
Mm,
on a credit card his name was not on, and he didn't have to see what it was I was doing. I felt like, oh, well,
mm,
it's fine. It'll be fine. But I was doing it because there wasn't money in the account for that to occur. Right. And
ah,
so if you do that a couple of times a week, we're talking over $100, maybe $200 a month just in lunches. Like,
mhm,
you know, not that it's unnecessary, but the dining out piece is unnecessary. I could easily make a decent sandwich or have like, leftovers for $2, right?
mhm,
Versus 12, $15 for
mhm.
lunch. And so it's not about deprivation. It really was about redirecting those dollars. Obviously, I back in the day, I will say I wasn't as into clothing as I am right now, to be honest with you. But back in the day, I had to really be intentional about like work clothes because I was just getting started in my career. And so we had to kind of figure that out. That was definitely something we had to um, take stock of. And then we enjoy travel and we caught the travel bug fairly early. And so I will tell you that we did not say no, we said how.
Mhm,
So there were things that we did that, like, we would drive to a place and drive home. We went to Disney and got our food, our lunch
mhm.
from Kroger, ate it in the car so that we were
Yeah.
not eating inside of the actual um, park because it
Mhm,
was so expensive to eat inside the park. And so we travel hacked in order to make it work before travel hacking was really a thing.
yeah.
And there were some things that we said no to in terms of travel. Like we wouldn't, if it, a lot of times if it required getting on a plane, we just didn't do it. And so that was a thing. We had losses in our family. So those plane tickets were, reserved, if you will. Like if we were going to spend money, it was for a funeral in those first few years. That's the honest truth. And so, um, we we did that, and then we also played offense. My husband got an additional job when we were
Mhm,
trying to get out of debt. Um, and I started my business before I left my job in order for the business to pay for itself.
mhm,
And so there were strategic things that we did in order to make sure that we were saving money. We couldn't skimp on childcare,
yeah.
right? We already lived in a house. There so we tried to keep things as minimal as possible. But there were just things that we would not say no to. We didn't say no to tithing. We didn't, you
Mhm,
know, if God would tell us to give, we would do that as well. And so I think that our journey took us 5 years to get out of our debt. And if we had made other decisions, sure, it might have taken less time. I fully believe it could have taken us 3 years. However, we wanted to still partake in life so that we didn't feel deprived or that, the budget was a straitjacket. We figured out how to make life work and also get out of debt. And I think that balance helped us keep our sanity. And we were raising, a family. And I think that sometimes it's hard to figure out how to make that balance. But we basically extended our time in debt in order to make some of that stuff work.
mhm. I love that you said that because a lot of times when we think about getting out of debt, we want it to be I'm going to eat beans out of a can for the next 6 months and it's going to happen. And for some people, that's your journey. Amen. If that is not your journey, I love how you said that. We could have done it in three, but we also were happy in five,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And I think that that is the misconception about budgeting in particular, and then subsequently about debt reduction is that you can't have anything. Like,
Yeah.
is this if we're punishing ourselves
Mhm.
for being in this position?
Mhm.
And
That's good.
the damage has already been done.
Mhm.
There is no reward for punishing yourself further. Literally no reward for that. It doesn't make you feel better. It's not this crown that you wear that you deprived yourself so well. That's an awful thing to strive for. And I don't believe that's what God wants. I honestly don't. And so I think most people appreciate a more balanced approach where you can go out to eat, you just don't go as often, or you're choosy about where, or you order in versus the nice, super nice dinner with dessert and you're taking your friends out as well, right? There are ways to do what you need to do without being extravagant and still being able to enjoy, and then also enjoying the free stuff too, right? I think that's the other part of this, is that we always act like everything has to cost something, and there's a lot of free or low cost ways to enjoy yourself as well. And so absolutely not, I do not believe in deprivation, and I think that that is not the goal. The goal is to get free of debt. The way you do that is your own personal journey, so own it, and I think that you can enjoy along the way.
Oh, that's so good. Look, guys, getting out of debt, you can enjoy it along the way.
That's right.
You talked about things like travel hacks. Our parents were travel hacking when we were little. I remember taking road trips and you had that cooler in the back. We didn't stop at no fast food. Y'all had sandwiches in there, you had drinks, you had fruit, you had whatever. But you didn't drive in the cross country. You didn't stop and eat everywhere. Like, it was stuff in the trunk. If you was hungry, you got something out the trunk.
Yep.
And even thinking about low cost and free things, I'm a military brat, so I think I have travel in my blood. So I love to travel. And so that's one of the things that I would do is I would drive just somewhere I had never been before, just as a day trip. So Sedona became one of my favorite places. It's 2 hours away. I can hike, I can take a lunch if I need to, if I don't want to eat out, and come home. And I feel like I've been somewhere. And then other things, when we talk about it's not no, but it's, having a plan and how do I do this? We think about things like our jewelry or our clothes. Do a jewelry swap with your friends. Do
Yes.
a clothes swap with your friends. I guarantee you all have stuff that you're not wearing or not using. Get together and swap. Now you got brand new stuff that didn't cost you anything. And
That's
so,
right.
find those creative ways, guys, to save money.
Yeah. And I would add, one of the things that I have said to clients repeatedly is it's not no or not ever. It is how much and how often.
Mm.
So when you're looking, I'm going to specifically say dining out. I think that's a super
Yep.
easy universal category that everybody can have some challenges with. So you don't have to say no entirely, right? That's not the goal. The goal is to think about how often and how much are you spending when you go. So, and the way you can look at this is when you categorize and add up all of your dining out, one, add up also how many times you go throughout those 30 days. Are you going 30 times so that it on average is once a day, even if it's just a $10, sandwich that you're picking up? Or is it every other day? Just look at the frequency and then identify maybe what is the average ticket, right? So if you add it up and it's $600 and you have gone 30 times, the average ticket is around $20, right? And so if you cut the frequency in half, but the average ticket stays about the same, that's $300. Like,
Yeah.
it's found money in a sense, right? And so you haven't necessarily changed where you're going. You're just changing how often. On the other side of this is if maybe you don't go, you know, you don't go super often, but the ticket price is like $50 each time because you're like, oh, I like nice stuff. Like, that's
Mhm.
what we're doing. But what if you said, okay, I'm going to try some new places. I'm going to go just as often. Like, it's 10 times a month instead of, it might be 10 times a month that you go. But if you change the amount that you're spending each time,
Mhm.
cut that in half. Wow, you've cut your budget in half, right? Like, you found $250. So I think that, again, we just have this, misconceived notion that budgeting means complete restriction and you
Mhm.
can't do anything, you can't have any fun, you can't enjoy. And I really want people to understand that the budget is yours. You get to control it. You get to put what's in there, right? If you don't like the income, go get more, right? Let's play better offense. And if you don't like the outgo, let's figure out how to change the narrative on how much and how often so that you can still enjoy without feeling deprived.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that helped us out, because if y'all know me, y'all know that I can cook, but I get no enjoyment out of it at all. I am not that woman that's like, let me spend 3 hours in the kitchen. No, no, no. What helped me, because like you said, Erica, eating out is probably one of most of our like kind of highest things that we can look at, was I decided that I was going to eat out for stuff that I wasn't willing to cook or
Mhm.
did not want to cook. So for example, things like there's certain tacos I like from a certain place. I'm not going to make them like that at home. I just know I'm not. Or lasagna, right? I don't eat a lot of pasta and stuff, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to get lasagna. I'm not making a lasagna. I'm just not going to do it. And so for stuff that I know I'm not going to make at home, or things that I'm not going to make at home, those are things that, to quite honest, I feel better about spending like that extra money on, right? Because it's like I'm not. But if it's like, I love a good omelet, I'm not gonna pay $20 for your omelet because I can make an amazing one at home. Or hamburgers and French fries, right? Stuff that I can make at home, I'm gonna make. But if it's that dish that I'm like, I'm just not even gonna attempt it, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get it from somewhere, and that's helped me.
That's so smart. I feel the same way as you do. When I go out to eat, it has to be worth it.
Yes,
And I'm a decent cook. I don't mind it. I just don't like cooking every single day. So I'm definitely the leftover queen. If I'm cooking, we having leftovers the next day.
right,
But I have been places where I'm like, I just made a dish like this at home. I literally just made it.
yes,
And that makes me feel like, man, I could have saved some money right here, right? The beauty though, like yesterday we went out to eat and my whole family had something completely different from one another. And that was, I'm glad, right? Because when you go out to eat and then somebody gets the same thing, it's like, wait a minute. See,
right,
I want to be able to taste somebody's different, you know what I mean?
yes,
I want to be able to taste something different at home. Everybody's eating the same thing, right? So, but it does have to be worth it. If I can make it at home, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna get something that I can't get or won't do well at home,
yes.
and that makes the experience a bit more worth it.
Yes. The worst for me is when I go eat out and I think to myself, man, I could have made this better and cheaper.
Oh
That
yes,
just
see.
hurts my soul when I'm like, I could have did this better and cheaper at home. Hurts my
Hmm.
soul.
Yep, yep, agreed.
Oh man. So okay, now look, now I hope all you guys who are listening are like, I'm going to do my budget. Like as soon as this podcast is over, like go do your budget. One of the things I want to ask you, Erica. So I talked about I've got my, spreadsheet that I honestly I think I found it 15 years ago somewhere. But I've got my spreadsheet. If you're not, a spreadsheet person, a computer person, what are some simple ways for you to, practically do your budget?
Yeah, honestly, you can write it out, literally write it out. You can put it on an Excel spreadsheet and just, it could literally be all the obligations every single month. You cannot do this without looking at your account. After you've added up all your expenses for 1 month, you know where the money has been going. So you know that those are the categories that you cannot miss,
Mhm.
right? It goes without saying that you have to have your housing and utilities and all of that kind of stuff, but food, and all of those things need to be in there. There's tons of templates out there. There's programs out there as well. But I personally, for over 2 decades, have used Excel to create the budget and the programs to track the spending. So I use Quicken to track my spending, to look at how it has spent, basically since I created the budget. You create the budget before the month starts. And so I track it that way just because I have more flexibility with using Excel. But you want to make certain that you don't miss anything. One of the biggest ways that people make mistakes with budgeting is that they don't have everything in there. So
Yes,
don't miss out on your subscriptions, right?
that's a big one.
And don't forget that your kids have certain activities or needs as well. Um, I think it's important that everything is in there and that so the simple equation is your income minus the outgo must equal zero. So you give every single dollar a name. You haven't won if you have money left over. Put that money to work. Tell it where to go. Put it into savings or put it towards debt reduction or one of your goals. But your income minus your outgo equals 0. And then if it's over, meaning you've overspent on the budget, right? You've already can see where there might be some challenges or issues. You go back and you see, where do I need to make some adjustments? Do that before you spend any money, because then you're being intentional. And so you have to make certain that you do that ahead of time. And I think that that will bring a little bit more peace of mind, like you know which direction it's going to go. And frankly, if you go over budget, you already knew it was going to happen. You knew
Yes.
why it was going to happen, right? Because if you set your dining out at $200 and then you went over to, 220, that $20 got to come from somewhere. And
Yes.
so you already know in your head that something has to shift. And so that's, I would say, the process.
Love it. Love it. So let's talk about some practical things behind our budget. So one of the things that, we were both raised to do was to save, and things like that. But that person who may say, I'm terrible at saving, right? And we talk about things like emergency funds. So how can someone get started? What are some practical things they can do to get started with savings? And I'll let you answer, then I'll share some of my little little things that I do. But what are some practical things that people can do?
So first of all, you need to look at the budget and see, is there any wiggle room at all, right? You need to understand, do you have a surplus when you've done the budget before you decide to put the money where it needs to go? If you do, fabulous. That makes it a little bit easier. If you don't, it's time to go find some travel, some hacking ways, not travel hacking, but just hacking ways, right? So I am a big couponer, super big. I'm not like extreme. I'm not an extreme couponer. I do not hoard items, but I love to find a good deal. I rarely buy things without a coupon. Because I think it's just so easy. It's just too easy to save money, honestly. And so always using coupons. A lot of people use the apps that will round up each of your purchases and save money directly. That's totally fine. And another tip I would say is to make it automatic. So on the 15th of the month, I already know that money is going to be deposited into my savings account. Or if you're doing it for like retirement, it comes automatically out of your paycheck. Just make it automatic, because money that isn't seen doesn't get spent, period. Right? So it gets moved, it gets transferred. Don't touch it. And then I would say there's 3 areas where money falls through the cracks. We already talked about dining out. Make sure that you hone that in, dial that in. During the holidays is a great time to get, let's say, $100 gift card for a specific place, and they will give you another $20 gift card because they, basically it could be a gift for someone, right? So it's a great way to maybe stock up on some of those dining out or use them as gifts. But dining out is one category. Subscriptions is a whole other category where people have gotten out of control.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're spending their money on. And so I would add up all of those subscriptions, see if you're using them. If not, you need to cancel some of them, the ones that you're not using, or being intentional. I've had people, they added up their subscriptions. It's over $150. And they're like, I had no idea. And they've got kids that are under 5, and they just started adding all of these things. And so we got their subscriptions down to $50. So that's $100 savings. And then the third area that I tend to see as a budget buster is going to be Amazon. And I would tell people to look at your Amazon account, add up how much you're spending there, and then look at what it is that you're buying. So this is where you have to say, is this a need or is this a want? And if you're making the conscious choice to purchase something and it's just for convenience, that's something that you have to really think about. Being intentional with Amazon is hard. I will tell you, removing your automatic access, meaning not having your debit card or your credit card set up with Amazon, helps reduce that a little bit, makes you think, because then you have to put that information back in. But we've got to look at those areas because typically those are the budget busters, in my opinion.
Oh man, that hit the nail on the head. You said Amazon. I felt something in my soul right there.
Yep.
I love how you were saying the automation, right? Automation can be our friend. One of the things that helped me early on when I wanted to create an emergency fund savings account was I hid money for myself, and I still do it to this day.
Yep.
So, out of my paycheck through my direct deposit provider, I have money coming into my paycheck, which I see. I have money going into a savings account, two different savings account, and I think my daughter's college fund, right? So that money I never see in my bank account, and I only budget off of the money in my bank account.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny because I had to every probably quarter or so I go and I kind of check my account, see where things are at. And it's so funny because I had to pull up a W-2 and I was like, wait, I make this much money? Because I'm telling y'all, I literally hide money from myself. And that has been one great way for me to do savings. Like you said, when it's literally out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But I know that in an emergency, I have that, or my daughter is I'm preparing for her future. And so with Amazon, one of the things that I started doing, Ericka, was I started looking at like the cost per ounce or unit. Okay.
Yeah.
That's something that we were never really taught to do. It's like, oh, is this on sale? But if you compare it to another size or another package size, it may actually be more expensive.
Yeah.
One of the things that I started doing, even though there's two people in our household, is I got a Costco card. And it was kind of like, what do I need this for? But when I looked at things like our paper towels, our tissue, our things like that, the cost per unit was so much less
Yep.
than buying them at like a Target or a Walmart that it actually saves money, even though mentally you're like, well, this package costs more. Well, yeah, it may cost more, but the unit may be a third or half of the price of what you're paying for at a regular store.
Yep.
And so, yeah, hide money from yourselves, guys. I
Yeah.
think so. This is funny. This just popped into my head. I think this may have been why some of our grandparents probably hid money in mattresses and stuff.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. It is. You know what? And that's the thing. If you know that seeing it is going to be a problem with you
Yep.
thinking that you have more, you need to hide it. And I would even say one of the things that I did too was I had an online bank that wasn't attached to my normal
Yes.
banking institution. So you put money,
Mhm.
direct deposit would be really great.
Mhm.
Put it into the online bank, and then it doesn't show up on your banking on your
Yep.
phone connected to where you typically
Mhm.
do all of your spending. And so then it's further away. Like and then it takes a couple days for it to actually get to
Yep.
your bank, right? If you really need it. And so I have found that that's a really great way to make sure that you have it away. The other thing is sometimes with online banks you can get a little bit of a better interest rate
Mhm.
on your money. So or return, I should say, on your money. And so that might also be another reason to look at an online bank.
Yep, I do the same. I have 3 different banks for 3 different things, and only
Yep.
one of them I have the app on my phone. So the
Mhm.
other 2, like you said, I either have to physically go or it takes a few days, so I can't easily be like, "Oh, let me get 10 from here, let me get 15 from here."
Yep.
No. So look, y'all, the lesson of this is know thyself, okay?
Yes.
Know thy spending habits, know thy pitfalls, and protect yourself from yourself, okay?
No,
Okay?
that's real. That's real talk. I think it's super important for you to understand who you are and what's going to work for you. Be honest because nobody's
Yes.
perfect. Nobody has this thing all figured out. But if you know who you are, you'll know what's going to work for you to get you towards your goals.
That is so good. So, Erica, one other thing I want to touch on is talking to your children about money. So we both, shared the experience that we really didn't have parents who really sat us down and talked to us about money. How important in it is it, and how early should you start talking to your children about healthy money habits?
Oh, it's vital to talk to your kids about money because our kids learn a lot outside of our home. They go to school for just as long as you go to work. They have friends. They are watching marketing on
Mhm.
TV. They're on social media. They are being pulled in a million different directions. And if you don't guide the financial part of this conversation, they're going to learn bad habits elsewhere. So I think it's vital. And our school districts aren't uniform, nor are they comprehensive in financial education. So you can't rely on them to do the job. So you've got to give them bite-sized pieces along the way that they can digest. And I think a 5-year-old can understand work and reward. They can clean their room, get a reward. We did that for many years with our kids. We called it the pop shop. And so we just had a reward system along the way to help them learn that you do something, you are rewarded, because that's what work is. You go to work, you're rewarded with a paycheck, right? And so as they get older, you can take on more responsibility. You can have them take out trash, or they can take care of the dog, or they can learn how to do dishes and things like that, bringing their clothes down for the laundry and separating. There's lots of things around the house that can be done. And we frequently talked about work and reward. I want you to feel rewarded. So at some point it changed to money or gift cards or whatever. I think around the age of 12 or 13 is where you really want them to understand something. This is where conversations are super important. I think we hide or keep to ourselves the things that aren't great about money, or that we feel shame about. And I think that's a miss on our part as parents. I think that it's okay for our kids to learn, about our mishaps. It is okay for our kids to learn how much an electric bill is. You don't want to worry them. You definitely don't want them to hold burden, right? But you do want them to understand the responsibility that it is as an adult to take care of yourself, and to have a healthy viewpoint of that, so that when they launch off on their own, they have a healthy understanding of the responsibility that it takes to take care of themselves. And so, I think around the age of 12 or 13 is totally fine to talk about, like, look at, when you're pumping gas, look at how much I spent, right? Or take them to the grocery store and not just have them put in what they want. Let's talk about what this is adding up to. Your favorite snack, how much is it costing? Things like that. I even say, like, there's much value in a young person, and I'm going to say younger than 12, to have their own cash to go buy their own Barbie doll or their own toy or their own game. I think that that is a very valuable and important lesson. As a person who gives, you want them to see you giving. As a person who, works, or even if you have an extra job or a business, like, it is important to pull back the curtain and allow them to see why these activities are important. So age appropriate learning is very valuable. And then around the ages of 15 or 16, I think that they need their own bank account. I think it's really important. This is a huge shift for me that I made that has worked for both of our kids. Is we gave them money for them to manage. So they're always going to come at you, I need $20 for this. I want to go with a friend. I want to go to the movies. I want to blah, blah, blah. I'm tired of that. So let me give you money into this account. You have a debit card. Go have fun. Go get you some ice cream. Go enjoy. It reduces the amount of back and forth with us, and it helps me with my budget too.
No, right.
And so they have now dollars to manage, in addition to, we can put that into the budget. And I've done that for years. I still have my youngest one on payroll like that, right? And so that is very helpful for both parties. But I think around the age of 15, 16, and you define what it is. I mean, when they got a car, they needed a little bit more money because of gas, right? When they get a job, I still put more money in there. I never want them to be without, but it's not like $1 million. I mean, it's really $100 a month or $200 a month. As a college student, $300 or $400 a month. And that gives them the opportunity to flex the muscle of managing a flow of cash versus always feeling like they have to run to somebody for help. And that gives them that independence that you want them to have. So I think age appropriate learning is super valuable. You can start as young as 3 or 5 with work and reward, and it doesn't end until they literally have their job and they're out of your home.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Some of the things I did with Ray right up that alley. When she was probably about 4, she would collect change over the summer. She could get it out of the car, out of my purse, but she had this change jar, and when it was full, we went to the store, but she could only spend what was in her change jar. And I remember going to Toys R Us with her, and she was like, "Oh, this stuff is expensive." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it is." And I was like, "You have to think about tax, and you have to." And so
All of
from
that.
then on, she'd be like, "Is it on sale? What's on sale? Can we get something on sale?" Because I would say, this is the amount you have. I'm not going to give you a penny more. You got to spend what is in your jar. And then as she got older, I don't believe in allowance. I believe in a paycheck. And
That's right.
so she started doing things around the house. She got a paycheck, even things now. So she's a freshman in high school. She does have a bank account where she can, that's her spend money, but we talk about savings. We talk about tithing. But then even with her funds at school, so her lunch money. So they use a digital system. So each month I tell her, I'm going to put this much on. I think she gets $50 a month.
Yep.
When you are out of money, you got to figure it out. So that's either taking your lunch, spending your own money, and I don't put 1 cent more on that
Good for
lunch
you.
account.
Yep.
And so she has had to learn, because her school, girl, they'll have Chick-fil-A. Yes, girl, yes.
Wow.
And so she's had to learn, and she'll be like, "How much is in my lunch account? What can I eat today?" But I believe that all those things, exactly what you said, are teaching our children how to be responsible and have a healthy, outlook on finances. So Ericka, as we close, just where can someone connect with you? I know that you currently don't coach a lot of individuals, but I think you do have some great resources out there that people can learn from. So where can someone connect with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to remember is on Facebook, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. It's Ericka Young Official. My website is erickayoung.com. And yes, the work that I am now doing is a lot of financial wellness in the workplace. So I would love to come into workplaces and do webinars or in person events to help this one to many approach expand, if you will, and to help, a full bank of employees to understand how to manage their money and take their finances to the next level. And so that is more of what I'm doing. I do also have a course on erickayoung.com under the resources where you can do that individually. And that is one way to get me individually, because I will also do a 1 hour session with people at the end of that course. So just know that Beyond the Budget is what it's called. And that's a way to still get my methodology and a little bit of time with me through coaching.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Ericka, thank you so much again for spending time with me. It's been a pleasure. I've, renewed my mind again around finances. I'm going to look at my budget again and be like, okay, where's some areas I might need to look at? But thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for joining me on today's podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, guys. So get out there, get your budget pulled up, get your credit report pulled up. If you need an accountability partner, some chocolate, some ice cream, whatever you need to do, but get you guys' life back together or get on the right track with your finances. So thank you again for joining me on the Divorce Remix podcast. I will see you guys again soon.